Hello and welcome back to the show. So, I am joined today by the expert on cash flow and passive income, Chris Miles. Chris is what's called an anti financial advisor, and he is going to be talking all about the real financial advice that you should be listening to create passive income, get out of debt, and really live the life that you choose to live. So, Chris, without further ado, I want to welcome you to the show.
Hey, it's such a pleasure to be here, Kobe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. So, before we get into anything, would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and how exactly you came across, I guess, the opportunity now to be, what you call an anti-financial advisor and create different passive income streams and also share these strategies with other professionals and entrepreneurs as well?
Yeah, the short story is I became the anti-financial advisor because I used to be the traditional financial advisor, realized it was crap, it didn't work. And so I started doing the opposite because I was able to retire when I was 28 by not doing what they taught. And the long story is, I wasn't raised as a financial expert. I was like most people. I had parents that taught me good values of work hard, your word is your bond, follow your passions, that kind of thing. But that being said, when it came to money, it was always scarcity. We can't afford this. What do you think? Money grows on trees? I'm not made of money, those kind of phrases you'll hear all the time. And so I was taught that a lot. And so obviously when like any teenager, right? You don't want to be like your parents. You want to do something different. So when I went to college, I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to have the typical corporate path. I should be an entrepreneur or at least be an independent consultant or something like that. So I was going to become a business consultant, but I figured I should have real life business experience. So what I did is I actually dropped out of college with one class to go. It was only supposed to be temporary. And I was like, oh, let's find some business, something that can give me some real life experience before I go back and get my MBA. Well, the first business that really came up that I thought was pretty fascinating was actually becoming a financial advisor. Although I'd never really had a background in that, I was pushing hard to get interviewed. I didn't realize they take anybody off the street that at least has a clean criminal record and can pass a test with 70%, which is all it requires to be a financial advisor. And so that's what I did. And I did that for several years. And as I got into that, then my dad reached out to me and said, Chris, when are you going to advise me? And I never considered that before. I never thought he would ask me for advice because he changed my diapers. Now he's asking me to talk about changing his retirement plan, right? So I sat down with him, saw his finances for the very first time in my entire life. And as I look at it, this guy, he saved his 401k. He stuffed the money in just like you're supposed to get the match and everything. He had paid off his house early. He was totally debt free. He was like Dave Ramsey's older brother that he looked up to, right? He was like the poster child for what every saver should do. And not to mention the guy was dirt cheap too. Not, the guy bought everything on sale and he bought it in bulk. But despite all of that, I sat down and when I looked at his finances, I said, Dad, you're 61 years old. If you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that is when you're going to run out of money. And he's like, well, okay, what else can I do? I don't know, Dad. You did everything right. You did everything I would have advised you to do. You've been in the stock market. You paid off all your debt. You've pretty much done everything by the book. It's just not enough. And that really bugged me because if a guy that's dirt cheap, that likes to save everything, pay off all of his debt, do everything to that level, still didn't really have hope of much hope of a retirement, who else did that affect? And I remember just a few weeks later, I'm sitting down with my friend who was a financial advisor that I hired on my team, but then he left to go do real estate investing with his father. And lo and behold, 4 months later, he's talking about how his dad's doubled his income as a professor at the local university by doing real estate investing. And I thought, come on, that's too good to be true. There's no way. And he said, Chris, how many of your clients are really financially free where they don't worry about money? And I said, well, I got several retired clients, but they still worry about running out of money. So I better say none. He said, well, good job, Chris. Way to help no one. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning from this business, but actually investing in these things? And when I started to think about the 100 plus advisors in my office, I realized, well, none. Because there's guys who've been working here since the late 1970s and they can't retire either. They're old retirees that should be retired and they can't. So I guess none of them have. There's your problem, Chris. And over the course of the next several months, eventually I quit being a financial advisor because I had this integrity crisis. I realized that financial advising wasn't working. People were not becoming financially free, saving the way that we've all been taught, right? Everything that was supposed to be wise, conventional wisdom in financial advising is a bunch of crap. And so I can either keep doing that and make money, which some of my friends have chosen to do, or I take a different path and quit. And so I chose the latter. I quit, vowed never to teach about money again, other than doing mortgages. That was what I was doing in 2006. And then I was kind of just figuring out what to do with my life a little bit, and also learning how to invest, how to become more of a passive investor and create passive income. And lo and behold, later that next year, when I was 28, almost 29 years old, I was actually in a place where I had enough passive income that I could quit. I could actually not even do mortgages anymore. I could just keep being a passive investor for a few hours a week, if that. And at that point, I realized I want to do this when I grow up. Like, I actually want to help others do the same. I want to help liberate them and give them that chance. And so in 2007, I came out of retirement to teach people to do what I'm doing now, which is getting them to work, get their money working harder for them, so they don't have to work so hard for their money, and really just break themselves of those chains and really truly escape the rat race, just like Kiyosaki teaches in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Well, we actually teach you how to do it.
That's awesome. And that's really interesting that you mentioned, the story about your father, which is, he was seemed to be someone who's like a poster child of what traditional mainstream financial advice teaches. And yet still, he didn't have enough money at the end of his career to really retire comfortably for what you said was, I think, 4 or 5 years, right, into the
Mhm.
future. So what would you say, as far as mainstream advice goes, or the stuff that people hear all the time on other podcasts or just on the news, or different things like that, or maybe just from a family member, what would you say is the biggest piece of misleading advice that they're getting that is creating this problem?
It's overpromise and underdeliver, for one. Most financial advisors talk about you earn 10 or 12% in the stock market. It's been that way. They'll show you charts showing how it's been that way since
Yep.
2000 BC, right? Um, but the thing is, in truth, and I've ran the numbers. I mean, if you pull up the actual S&P 500 chart, which, by the way, the S&P 500 does better than most mutual funds retirement accounts that you put your money into. Even then, the S&P has only averaged about 7.75% over the last 30 years. Not 10, not even close to 12, 7.75. Even worse, you're told, even if you're not told, even though you don't have a financial advisor, you still, if you work at a job, I mean, I know a lot of you guys aren't, because a lot of you guys are entrepreneurs, but maybe you've been with a company that offers a 401k and they tell you, put your money in and get that match, right? But here's the problem is that 401ks, Fidelity just came out with their numbers. I ran the numbers on their retirement target date funds, which most, especially millennials, are investing in right now. Is about 84% of millennials invest in target date funds. Well, guess what? Over the last 10 years, those target date funds did 2% worse than the stock market average. So what does that mean? Is that instead of making 7.75%, you're making 5.75%. Oh, but wait, there's more. There's a 0.75% cost fee that comes out of that 401k for having that comes off the top that you don't count in that rate of return. So in reality, when you're expecting maybe 10 or 12%, you're making 5, and even get that piddly little match adds like really long-term 1 or 2%, and that's it. And so the problem is that people expect they're going to make more. They've been told by people like Dave Ramsey, for example, that you save $100 a month for 40 years at 12%, you'll have $1 million. The truth is, you still don't make $1 million. You're still a little bit short. And the truth is, nobody makes 12%. So if you actually make that number even 7%, that number ends up being more closer to like 250 to 300,000, not $1 million. So what's happening right now is that we've got all these people that have been pumping their money in, and they don't know how much to put in because they were told that if they just put in whatever they can save, it'll be enough. But the problem is that I've done the math. When you factor in inflation, even as a conservative, say 5% a year, and that is conservative for real rates of inflation, not what the government tells you. That's a bunch of crap too, right? When you factor that in, the problem is when you save 20,000 a year in a 401k, after inflation, guess what you're allowed to pull out? 20,000 a year of that current lifestyle, right? Based after inflation. That's the problem, is that people think this is the answer and they don't even have much of a plan of how to get out of it. They just keep doing it because everybody else does. The problem is, even Fidelity, if you go off their own statistics, 46 million customers that they have, only 299,000 have over $1 million in their 401k. 299,000, less than 300,000. That means less than 1% success rate. And even then, that's not success, because the financial advisor will tell you to only pull off 3% a year. So if you have $1 million you happen to save up, you're now living on 30,000 a year. That's crap. You'd be much better served doing something else in the alternative space, like real estate.
Right. And that's exactly like what I was going to ask you next, which is, you mentioned when you started to, step out of being a financial advisor, you were able to retire fairly quickly by investing in, passively investing in different income streams that are able to allow you to do that. So my question is, what are some of these things that I guess people should be looking into, or at least starting to do research into? I know this is not, I guess an easy question to answer, right? Because there's good and bad for every type of
Mhm.
investment. So in your opinion, what are some things that people should be looking into as far as investing? Is it just real estate, or is there some other income streams that people can be at least looking into or doing their research on to see whether or not it's something they want to pursue?
Yeah, there's a whole rabbit hole. I mean, the great thing is, especially if you're a realtor, I mean, you know this. I mean, you know that real estate exists. Um, and as a realtor, it's not a bad idea to have real estate investments, but you do want to make sure you do it correctly. And I like more of the passive side, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not now. I'm not putting the type of real estate investing where you might be the agent buying it in your own backyard because you found a good deal. And if you can, great. If the numbers work out, awesome. You could definitely make more money that way. However, I used to do that myself. I wasn't a realtor, but I was a mortgage broker that, also did, bought real estate properties. But I'll tell you, I hated being the property manager. I hated dealing with the headaches, the day-to-day stuff. I really wanted to be a passive investor. So after the last recession kicked my butt, when I came back again in the 2010s, I became more of a passive investor. And that's what I'm more talking about today. So like passive investing would be, if you're going to talk about rentals, for example, turnkey real estate would be more passive than just buying a rental and managing yourself. Turnkey properties means you can buy anywhere in the country. There's usually a turnkey company that might be in a certain area or areas of the country that they already have these properties. They probably already renovated these properties or in the process of renovating them so that they're rent ready when you buy it. So then they could fill it for you. They're the property manager, or they have somebody else be the property manager they outsource to. But you don't even have to find the property. They have a whole list of properties you can pick from, and you can know the numbers ahead of time. 2, they help you with the financing if you need to get a bank on that. And then 3, they'll property manage it for you. So you're not dealing with the headaches. I mean, I've got several turnkey properties and rentals all over the country. And I live in Utah, but all my rentals are out east because Western United States sucks right now. Pretty much Texas, Oklahoma, out eastward's better, right? But I'll tell you, like, it's amazing that I can be hands off and still earn double-digit returns on my investments. That's what I love. And I own and control it still. So I get all the tax benefits. My renters pay down my mortgage for me. I still get the appreciation and stuff. It's awesome. I even compare it to stock market. Like I did a 5-year comparison of when I bought one of my rentals in Memphis 5 years ago, compared to putting that money in the stock market. Even after the nice big run up, thanks to 2020 money printing like crazy, and even into 2023, market's up pretty well. Well, I would have had just over $50,000 for my 32,000 that I invest in that property if I had just put it into stock market, right? So $50,000, yay, I can live on like $1,500 a year. But I have a rental that actually has made me a total return of over 300%. I've made over 100,000 with that 32,000, and it pays me in cash flow about 7,500 a year. And that's after I pay my property managers, my mortgage, and everything. That's my profit. You can't beat that. I mean, that's the beauty. And that's what woke me up. That was what got me really to leave financial advising, is when I caught that vision of cash flow versus accumulation. Because everybody always tells you store that money away, pack it away, and then you can live on less than the interest in retirement, right? You build up that huge nest egg to then start pulling off of it. But when I realized that, what if I can invest $100,000 instead of living on 3,000 a year in the traditional financial way? Instead, I can make, say, $1,000 a month off that, like 1% a month, 12% a year. That's a heck of a lot better. Like that's better than $250 a month to make 1,000. I can quadruple my returns, the amount of income coming in by investing outside of the stock market. And I don't have to worry about huge market drops. Even if the real estate market drops, I'm not so concerned because, again, it always comes back to profit and cash flow. What's that income it's paying me? If the values tank, I don't care. Because if that thing is a cash cow, keeps paying me, I will sit on that for as long as I need to until it maybe makes sense not to. So that's one of the cool things you can do. Other strategies you can do, you can lend money. That was one thing I never realized I could do is I could be the bank. I can lend money and to an investor themselves, let them do all the work. And I get paid a contractual 10, 11, 12, 13+% on my money per year. That's awesome, right? Again, I'm passive. There are other things you can do. You can pool your money together, go into syndications, right? Where you pool your money with other investors to go buy an apartment complex, for example, or self-storage units, which tend to be a little bit more recession resistant versus apartments, which are getting their butts kicked right now. Or you can invest in things like oil and gas. I got money in that, and some of my clients actually have earned 35% in the last year, just in these, where you basically lease out the land, and you also get the royalties from the drilling too. So you kind of double dip on those kind of investments. I'm doing raw land right now, where I have partners doing all the raw land flipping and seller financing and stuff. That right there, I invested initially 150,000 about a year and a half ago. I'm now making 7,500 a month off that alone. So, there's just, when you realize there's so many other options, and then you look at the stock market, which has high risk, mediocre returns, it kind of seems like a joke. You're like, oh, that's what novice people do. That's what the amateurs do. That's what the average American does to go broke. No, I'm going to put my money here where I can actually have real income coming in that can get me to my financial freedom goals much, much faster than just, throw my money away into the stock market.
Right, absolutely. And I guess like the question will be, why do you think there's so many people, aside from the fact that there's getting that financial advice from either their company or the media or their financial advisors? Why do you think that is that so many people tend to stay with the stock market? Do you think it's just because, it takes maybe a little bit more work to do your own research and create these income streams yourself versus just kind of almost like putting your money into the stock market and just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best?
Yeah, I believe it's mostly money and marketing. You're right. There is some due diligence to do, when you're trying to invest, and sometimes you can be in part of communities and groups that help you do that. But really it comes down to money and marketing. It's the same reason why most people never know that there are certain things like, in the health space, right? Like silver can actually help heal a lot of your ailments, right? Just taking oral, just drinking silver, for example, right? You can use certain things like with probiotics, right? You can do things to help boost your vitamin C and things like simple stuff like eating more fresh vegetables and things like that. Less inflammatory foods like cheese and dairy and breads and things like that. Those simple things, you don't really hear about that much other than within a few circles, right? But man, if there's a drug out in the market, you hear about it and you see it whenever you're at the gym, you see it like up on the commercials in between. Almost all of them are drug commercials, right? Even if you're on YouTube, again, there's probably a drug commercial. There might even be one right now you're watching, right? Who knows? But it's like they just pimp themselves out because that becomes mainstream because that's what's put in front of your eyeballs. And of course, then you have doctors that support it too. Why? Because the doctors get paid from the pharmaceutical companies. Money is no different. Money is the same way. When it comes to investing, remember financial advisors, and I learned this firsthand. Because I remember when a financial advisor was teaching about average versus actual returns, he was showing that, if you lose 50% one year, he asked us, what would you have to make to get back to zero again? We all said 50%. There's like 60 of us in a room that said 50%. You lose 50, you didn't make 50 to get back. He's like, no. If you had $100,000, you lost 50%, you're at 50,000. 50,000 making 50% only makes you 25,000. You're only at 25, only made 25. That's only 75,000. You have to make 100%. If you lose 50%, you have to make 100% the next year just to get zero. He's like, and guess what your average return was? Minus 50 plus 100 is 50 divided by 2 years, 25% average return. I remember when he taught that, we were blown away. We're like, wait, what? And again, we were all financial advisors. Some have been working there for decades, never even heard of that simple little mathematical concept that changes everything in our world. I remember we started like looking at, things that happened. This is after Y2K. So we were kind of fresh in our minds. And we all realized, listen, even with the roaring 90s and all the stock market boom there, we would have all had more money had we not lost money in the market. And I remember telling that to the guy after he taught it to us. I said, hey, I need to talk to you. And I cornered him in the parking lot. I said, listen, I just did the numbers here. We would have all been better off not putting money in the stock market. He says, yeah, he's like, I get that. He's like, I only taught you that concept because we're just trying to sell to people scared of the stock market right now. So we have a product just for them. But really, you're young, you're in your late 20s. You could take that risk. You would be better off in the market anyways. And when he told that to me, I realized all I was doing, I was just a product peddler. I was just a salesman in a suit selling people mutual funds and insurances because that's all you can do and offer as a financial advisor, right? I mean, if you're in real estate, you already know if you ask any financial advisor, hey, should I invest in real estate? They're probably going to say no. Why? Because they don't get paid commissions off of that, right? And if you follow a chain of command, that guy worked for a financial institution like the Fidelities, the Goldman Sachs, right? All those companies, the Merrill Lynches. They teach the financial education down to financial advisors, and then we teach it to everybody else. And even the people in the media, guess who they're trained by? Same people. And guess who puts the biggest advertising commercials on there? Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs. They're the ones putting those freaking commercials on you, just like the freaking pharmaceutical companies. They're basically prostituting themselves, and that's all you hear about. And then you go to your, even if you work a corporate job, you go to your benefits specialist, and all they offer is the 401k, and all you can do with that 401k is put it in these mutual funds. And if you don't want to think about it, just throw it in these funds. Look, it says target date retirement 2055. Hey, that's when I want to retire. I'll just throw all my money in that. And it's an easy button, right? Just click and I'm done. You don't have to have any education or anything. So they've made it so brainless that as a result, people don't make any money, right? Because when has brainless ever been a good thing, right? Whenever you like turn off your brain and not do anything, what if you turn off your brain with your relationships? What if you stop trying to nurture that relationship with your spouse, your partner? What's going to happen, right? If you turn off your brain and never take care of your kids, what's going to happen to your kids, right? You turn off your brain with anything in life, you're going to lose it. And the same thing's true with your money.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good point for anybody who's listening to this, right? Don't turn off your brain. Start thinking for yourself. Start making these decisions for yourself, right? Start poking holes in a lot of the mainstream information that you're getting, right? Say, what's their benefit, right? Why are they telling you this information? How is it going to help them? How is this going to hurt me? And what are the alternatives, right? Seeing these things that
Exactly.
are out there and really using this gift that is your brain, right? Your mind to make these decisions for yourself, I think it's so important. And listening to this podcast right now, I think would be would be pretty helpful. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I know I'm not taking a negative spin on it, but it's true. Like you gotta kind of wake up and realize that I like to follow evidence, right? The evidence shows that, like I said, less than 1% success rate with Fidelity, like with them being able to build their funds. But in real estate, there's people that become accidental millionaires buying real estate. They could completely suck at real estate, just buy property, sit on it, and all of a sudden become millionaires. If that's not an evidence for success, I don't know what is.
Right. Absolutely. And there's another good question, I think, for a lot of people who are, maybe they're entrepreneurs themselves, right? A lot of people listening or watching this are real estate agents or investors, or just they're running their own business. So as somebody who is, pretty much putting a lot of their time and effort, running their own business, as it can take, more than 80 to 100 hours a day, if that's even possible, to work on their own business. But sometimes it can feel like that. So as far as building up multiple streams of passive income, what would be your advice as to, should somebody maybe just try to pursue as much as they can and just learn as much as they can, and then maybe just pick one, or should they just focus on one for now, build it up, and then when they have more time, because it is a passive income stream, it's going to continue paying them, they take their additional time and they invest it into learning more about the next stream, and so on and so forth, until they're really financially free.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to have passive streams of income outside of your business. Now, granted, I get it because I've been in business for over 20 years. Um, it's great. Like if you're looking at the number one investment to invest in, first and foremost, it is your business, because that is the thing you can control. You can make way more money within your business than you can even doing passive investments. right? Like for example, like I've invested money into different aspects of my business where, like for example, marketing, I want to at least minimum triple or quadruple my returns, right? At least a 300 or 400% return. Well, yeah, that's gonna definitely be the case. I won't be able to get those kind of returns, with my real estate, right? That's just not going to happen. But here's the entrepreneur trap. Here's the business owner trap that I see happen so often. And I've been guilty of it before too, before I got out of the rat race myself, was that you can get trapped making a good income. See, even if you're a real estate professional or a business and a business owner or whatever it might be, you could be making multiple six figures a year, looking like on social media, it looks like you have the high life, that you're living the life of your dreams. You can take those vacations here and there, right? But in the back of your mind that you're still trapped. You're stuck. That pretty much you got to still go back to work that next week or that next Monday and get things moving again. That you have to keep hustling and keep creating more. And if you're always quote unquote reinvesting money into your business, you get caught in a worse trap, worse rat race than what Robert Kiyosaki talks about with employees. Because employees, yes, they get caught in their own rat race, but a business owner, they get deceived in their own rat race because they think, I'm just going to keep reinvesting money in my business, and their revenue grows, but their profit never ends up being profit because they keep putting the money back in their business. What do they call that? They call that expenses, right? That's called zero profit. If you keep reinvesting everything you have zero profit. Your number one goal when you invest in your business is to create more profit, more bottom line, money you can bring home. And then that money is the money you use to go and invest to create multiple streams of passive income. Because we never know when the government says, you know what, we're going to have another COVID type situation and we're going to shut everybody down again. And then you're non-essential business all of a sudden, right? You never know that's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with different markets. If you're a real estate agent, right? Markets can shift and it can get a lot more competitive, a lot harder. You've already seen this happen. It can get better too, but you never ever want to be relying on just that one source of income. Because if you have to always hunt and kill your food, eventually you're going to burn out. The best thing you do is get profit, take that money, invest it elsewhere so that you become what I call work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to. And I'll tell you, this is a business secret. If you want to make more money in business, stop needing to make money. Because if you don't have to make money, what's incredible is you tend to make more money in your business too. Because when the pressure's off, when you don't have to, sell that client right away, you don't have to push them to get that close date done before the end of the month, or you're going to have to carry it over to the next month or whatever it might be. If you don't have to keep closing business and keep closing, you'll find out you'll work less and make more. Because when you're in a place of abundance, you're a place of power when you're relaxed, in a relaxed state, meaning that your money, your bills are already taken care of because you have enough passive income to cover everything. Everything you make in your business is just gravy. This is what happened to me, by the way, in 2006. Once I got to that point, it was amazing how many people wanted to do business with me. It was like it was just magic. It was like all of a sudden they realized like I didn't need the money. I was more relaxed. I would talk to people versus when I was hungry for commissions, right? I call it commission breath. When you're like really hungry for it, all of a sudden I had to work 5 times harder to get that client because I'm driving people away with my business breath, right? I reek of it because it gets sense desperation. Every time you've been to a business event, for example, or a networking group, you'll find those people. They throw business cards at you left and right, create no relationship. They just say, well, call me, right? And it's like they're throwing Chinese stars at you and they're throwing their business cards at you and stuff. You're like, you don't want to be in that trap. When you get desperate for money, that's when nobody wants to pay you. When you're abundant, when you know you don't need money, that's when everybody wants to do business with you.
Yep, absolutely. That's such a good lesson for, I think, anybody who is in business or more importantly in a sales position to know that, right? And I think,
Mhm.
some of the top sales trainers in the world, like, the author of, I believe, Fanatical Prospecting, if you're familiar with that book, Jeb Blount, he mentions that all the time, right? If you have a big, but he just talks about it in a different way, right? If you have a big pipeline, then
Mhm.
you're not desperate. And if you're not desperate, you sell more. So that's
That's right.
absolutely true that if you are not desperate for money, you actually make more money. And another good point you brought up earlier on was that, entrepreneurs tend to create the rat race for themselves. And I've been seeing this so much with real estate agents specifically, is that it almost feels like you got the employee who's in the hamster wheel and they're running in the hamster, they're the hamster running on the wheel built by somebody else. Well, real estate agents, it almost seems like they're the hamster and they're building their own wheel as they run on it because they're the ones who are constantly telling themselves they need to work more hours. And if they don't have a closing, they don't have money to bring home and they're in that trap. So a lot of times you see people in these positions who just, that's all they do is that they don't own a business, they own their own job. And
Right.
that's not a good thing to have.
Well, I would definitely, from my experience, be on the other end of the table, having bought properties and dealt with real estate agents and stuff. And I love real estate agents. I think they're awesome. I'll tell you though, real estate agents can become like financial advisors if they only keep transacting business, right? You can always tell a difference of someone that is a real estate agent that is just in the process of selling you a property and doing the transactional piece of it, right? Almost, more the paperwork piece of it versus someone who's had real life experience being in real estate and various forms too. Because when you speak from that kind of experience, I'm telling you, you get better clients. I know I get attracted. I don't say attracted to real estate agents, right? I'm not saying I'm hitting on them. But what I mean is, I tend to be more impressed when I hear real estate agents when I know that they have other outside real estate experience. Not just because I'm trying to buy a property. Sometimes I'm just buying my own house, and all I'm hiring somebody to do ultimately is, either if I'm trying to sell a house, get me top dollar, or buy a house, get me a good deal, right? Obviously, that's all I want. But at the same time, if I know that somebody has a lot of real estate experience outside of those things, man, that makes a difference in my mind because I can just tell. You can just tell when you talk to them, and the higher quality clients, they just know they can tell there's a different level of understanding and wisdom that comes with that, and you will pay for that wisdom.
Right. Absolutely. So understanding that, like having your own investments, for one is, and you would be surprised that I guess like how many practicing real estate agents in the industry don't actually invest in real estate themselves or
Right.
even have any knowledge on this. So I think it's important to talk about this for agents to learn about investing, to get on platforms like, like Bigger Pockets, which I know you
Mhm.
have been featured on as well, and to start getting that education at the very least, if not investing in real estate themselves. So I think another one of the big, as we talk more about, getting trapped, right? For a lot of people, whether they're their own business owners or they're self-employed or whether if they are working for somebody else, a big, I guess kind of obstacle for them is that they've created this life where basically they're spending the same amount of money or more money in their expenses than they're making, right? And they're in debt
Right.
and they can't, their big excuse is that, I can't take anything to invest or I can't take any portion of my paycheck to even save because I need to pay all of my expenses. So my question is, how is somebody in that position, how should they focus their time on, right? Should they focus their time on getting out of debt first? Or should they focus on getting passive income streams that will then help them get out of debt?
That's a great question because it does depend. I will say this, kind of going on our previous conversation about Profit. Profit First by Mike Michalowicz is a must read if you're any kind of business owner, right? And I remember learning from Mike Michalowicz, one strategy if you want to start saving is just do it automatic, right? What happens is that I believe that savings is more of a habit. Sorry, let me say it again. I believe that savings is more of a habit than it is just, a convenience. Because the truth is that if you had, say, $100 a week automatically draft out of your account, you probably wouldn't notice it, right? You probably wouldn't notice it too much. You would still live your own lifestyle doing the same thing, but that $100 a week would be going out. And I don't care if it's $5 a week, right? Whatever that number is to get you in that habit, start doing it. So, like with Mike Michalowicz, when he talked about Profit First, I remember hearing him speak live before at a mastermind I was at, and he was talking about, he's like, just take that profit. And people are like, well, what percentage? He's like, anything. He's like, at least start with like 1%. Just start pulling 1% of profit, pull it out. Do that. Even if it's tight in those months. And that's the same thing at home too, personally, right? If it's tight, start pulling out money and start saving. I think you should do that even before you try to just pay off debt. That being said, you don't have to be one or the other. You can do both. I do teach a little strategy called a cash flow index. It's actually something I learned in 2008 when I was basically going from millionaire to upside down millionaire because I went over $1 million in debt when everything went negative cash flow, especially when I launched a brand new business. So I was in the hole like 15, 16,000 a month every month. And I had very limited money left in savings. I'm like, do I invest it or do I pay off debt? And I remember I was playing actually the Cash Flow 202 game, Robert Kiyosaki's game. I was playing it. And all of a sudden the epiphany hit me is that cash flow is still cash flow, whether it's debt, whether it's investing. Which one gives me the bigger payment, right? Which one frees up or increases my cash flow the most with the least dollars out of pocket? Well, I equated that to my own life. I almost put my own rate of return, but I call it cash flow index. And this is what I do. I take the balance of that loan and I divide it by the minimum monthly payment, your required monthly payment. I divide those two into each other and I'll get an index number. The lower the number, the more, the faster I'll pay it off, right? So I pay off the lowest index first. So for example, say you have two $10,000 loans, one $10,000 loan, let's say it's a credit card, but it's $200 a month. And the other $10,000 loan, say it's an auto loan at $500 a month. Now, if you were to ask the traditional advisors and the Dave Ramseys of the world, if all you had was $10,000, guess which one they're going to tell you to pay off every time? The credit card, right? Pay off the credit card. But look at reality. Think of it even from like a business owner or an investor mindset. If I have $10,000, do I want to free up 200 a month or 500 a month? Which one's going to make the bigger impact in my life? 500, right? I'm going to pay off the car loan instead. And that's the difference. Now, somebody might say, well, what about the interest rate? The interest rate doesn't matter that much. It's actually all smoke screen that the banks use to get you to do what they want. That's why they use interest rates to help you. That's why a 30-year mortgage has a higher rate than a 15-year mortgage. Banks actually want you to pay off that mortgage faster. They want that money, that principal back faster to reduce their risk and give them more money to turn around and loan to other people, right? It gives them velocity of money. That's the same thing for you. You want velocity too. Get rid of that higher payment given the same balances. So the index, if you look at it, 10,000 divided by 200 was 50. On the other one, the car loan that we said this pay off is 10,000 divided by 500 is a 20. That lower index, pay off first. Then you can always take that 500 and roll over to credit card, paid off in less than a year anyways, with like negligible interest that you get charged in that process. So the interest doesn't even really matter. I realized I was on something crazy when I taught that to a girl who had just left college, and she had a credit card and she had a car loan. And I said, listen, what you're going to do is you're actually going to charge up your credit card for your monthly bills, for your monthly expenses, save the money in cash, checking or whatever, and then use that to pay off your car loan all at once next month. And because you only had like $3,000 left on the car loan, but it was $300 a month. And I said, if you do that, the credit card, the payment will go up like, it was going to go up like, a whopping, I think it was like, what was it? $100, about $100 a month. Not even that much. It was like $50 a month. It went up $50 a month from the credit card, but she saved $300 a month by paying off the car loan. So she freed up $250 a month with no money out of pocket. And she's like, wait, did you just tell me to pay off my car with my credit card? I said, well, indirectly, I guess I did. And that's why I realized like that kind of creativity. And that's what, by the way, got me out of over $1 million debt hole without any money or credit. I was able to do the same thing myself. And then I was able to take the extra cash flow, invest it to where by the end of 2016, less than 10 years after the recession, I was able to be out of the rat race for the second time. So it hasn't just worked for me, but it's worked for my clients and everybody else. Great way to free up cash.
Yeah, that's such a good piece of advice. I think well, first and foremost, for anybody who, kind of caught that little bit of a nugget there, if you haven't done so, go online. I think it's still free. Play the Rich Dad Poor Dad, cash flow game. It really helps put all of this into perspective, especially if you're more of a kind of a do it yourself, or you learn by doing, or you learn by, kind of seeing it in play. It's really helpful. But I think it's just people overcomplicate it, right? When it comes to, financial health or financial advice. There's so much going on, like you mentioned, with, people, the lenders and the banks, they put these fancy phrases and numbers and metrics in there for people to really not understand what's going on. But really at the end of the day, it's just how much is coming in, how much is going out, right? It's just your cash flow, right? That's what it comes down to. And that's a really simple way to kind of look at this when you make your decisions, right? So how much money am I saving? Which loan to pay off, right? Which one do I do first? Do I pay off the loan first, or do I create a passive income stream first? What is the net coming in and what is the net going out? And what is going to give you the biggest, like you mentioned, profit? So it's a really simple way to look at it. And it's a different way of thinking that I think for most people will make it easier for them to make better financial decisions.
Yeah. And when you ask about investing, I mean, when should you invest? I mean, pretty much when those indexes are usually over 50 or 100, then I usually feel pretty good to start investing. I'll say this though, unless you have at least 100 grand, don't even worry about investing. That's where saving is just fine. You might feel like it's a slow way to go, and it is slow. It's always that momentum curve, right? Just like when you start in business, you get going, it's kind of slow. You're putting a lot of work and effort into it, but then pretty soon you get that momentum and it feels easy. You make more money than ever you had previously to that. Same thing with money. I mean, you want to build up that cash, but get it at least to 100 grand or so before you even worry about passive investments.
Right. Absolutely. I think a lot of people they want to get started really quickly. But like you said, right, it's a slow curve, but once it does curve, right, if you have the patience to do so, it's going to pay off uh, really big dividends, if you will. So I think one of the last things I definitely want to have you touch on, and it's been seemingly, I guess, a pretty popular topic, like we talked a little bit before the podcast, was the infinite banking strategy or the infinite banking concept, right? I've heard a couple
Yeah.
people talk about it. So I like to get everybody's opinion on it because even for me, it's kind of a newer concept. But would you mind just kind of sharing how you came across infinite banking and kind of how are you using it and how are you teaching other people to use it?
Yeah, I definitely teach it from a different perspective because it comes from more from an investor perspective versus the typical person that teaches it, which is usually a commissioned life insurance agent, right? Now, granted, I have a life insurance license. We do that kind of stuff internally to design them. But the only reason we actually have a business doing it is because there's so many freaking people that do infinite banking that suck at it, to be honest, right? Again, nice guys, good people, but the problem is this: if you don't think like an investor, you're not going to get the best deal on those things. Uh, so, so you know what infinite banking is? It's really simply put a tax-free supercharged savings account, right? It's using life insurance, whole life insurance to be specific. You're using whole life insurance, not just for the death benefit, but you're actually building up that tax-free savings account inside of it called cash value. You're building up that cash value account to grow with compound interest tax-free. Oh, by the way, key thing, in most states, it's 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors. So even if somebody sues you for millions and win, they cannot get to this money. So a huge thing for protecting your money and assets. But here's where I see it going wrong. Most people tell you to buy a car with it or buy your house with it. That's the traditional way of teaching it. You save it, for retirement someday, and that's fine. That's an option. But today's strategy, that's bull crap. I would even do that. The best way to use it, at least in my opinion, is it's a great way to store cash. Like if I want cash reserves, but I want to earn more than point nothing percent in my crappy bank, then I can do that, right? Because I can earn usually at least 4 or 5% tax free versus earning 0.1% of my credit union that I then get taxed on, right? That's just ridiculous. So for example, my wife, she says, I want to keep $300,000 that's liquid that we just don't touch. We don't invest it. We don't do anything. Well, do the math. $300,000 earning 0.1% is $300 a year. And then I get taxed on that. So I walk away with what, $200? Versus I told her, I said, listen, what if we earmark, because we already had an insurance policy that had cash in it. I said, instead of investing all this cash here, let's instead hold this money here, 250,000 of this money that we don't invest. We can invest the rest, but 250,000 in the life insurance, 50,000 in the bank. Well, my life insurance pays me roughly about 5% after all the costs and fees. So I made about 12,500 tax free versus $300 that I get taxed on, right? So I'm already making more money on the money sitting around anyways. But then the rest, I use that to get my money to pay me twice. Because like I mentioned earlier, it kind of seems like a slow going way. And I tell people get up to 100,000. One of the great places you can save that money instead of putting it in your bank, save it here instead, grow that money in there. Yeah, you can get some cash reserves, but then you can grow that money to also use that money to then invest, because you can invest it however, whenever you want. And guess what? Here's the key thing that's awesome. This is why they call it infinite banking, because banks, they just borrow money from us, right? They borrow money out of our savings accounts to then invest it by loaning it out to other people. So if you ever walk into a bank, you see on the one sign, you see, hey, here's a great CD at, going to pay you 3% a year. And it's a 60-month CD or a 5-year CD. But then you see on the other wall, a 5-year auto loan at only 6.99%. You're like, wait a minute, you lock up my money for 5 years and the CD pay me 3, but then you charge me 7%. You're making not just 4%, you're making actually double, more than double, because 3, really you're making over double the interest, right? As the bank. The banks are literally making bank. Same thing here. You can actually use this cash, which is guaranteed to grow all the time. As a result, whether it's a bank or even the insurance company, they're willing to give you a line of credit using the cash as collateral, just like a home equity line of credit, but it's using your cash as collateral instead of the equity of your home. And the cool thing is the monthly payments, you can pay it back however, whenever you want. So there are no monthly payments. They charge you interest, but the cool thing is because of how they charge you interest compared to the money you're making is actually less. So you make money inside the account net, even if you did nothing with the money, because you can make more in compounding interest than what you pay on the interest to them. And then you can still invest that into a property or something like that. So you can actually still invest in real estate and you would make money over here with tax-free interest. You're actually double dipping. You're getting your money to pay you in two places at the same time. So I've actually shown that example of people where, like, if they're trying to buy real estate properties and stuff, like trying to invest, it could be the difference between after a 10-year plan of doing these alternative investments without using life insurance, it could be making, you might be hit like 110,000 a year by the 10th year. But using this strategy, you can get up to 120,000 a year by that 10th year just by getting your money to do more for you.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. And just one last question on this before we let you go here. So for somebody who is starting out, what would you say is, like a good place to, I guess, like, is there any requirements for, and I'm sure this is going to be different for everybody and they should talk to somebody first before they start trying to
Mhm.
set this up. But is there any requirements? Should they have, like you said, $100,000 saved up first, or should they just start, basically from net zero, start saving their income into these whole life insurance accounts instead of using a savings account?
You could do either. But I would recommend, I actually discourage people to throw a lump sum of cash in there because
Hmm.
there are insurance agents out there that talk about infinite banking that say, yeah, dump a ton of money in the beginning and then you back it off and do less later down the road. That pays them more money because insurance agents make the most in the first year. So that's their highest cost. I actually recommend doing it regular basis. If you can save at least $5,000 a year into savings or into a retirement plan or something like that, if you're already putting money towards that, do this anyways. If you're already trying to put money towards investing, this is a great way to replace that. So if you can do at least 5,000 a year, now it's not for people that if you're over the age of 70, I generally don't recommend this strategy as much. If you're in horrible health, you're a smoker or something like that, not as good for you that way. But if you're in decent health and you're under the age of 69, then it could work depending on your situation. So definitely run the numbers. I would recommend if you're going to research and go down that rabbit hole, I've got a YouTube channel called Money Ripples. I actually have an infinite banking playlist where I talk about some of the pitfalls you got to be careful for because there are insurance agents out there that will charge you sometimes double the insurance cost that you need to be paying. So you want the lowest cost possible. So I would recommend looking up that infinite banking playlist on Money Ripples channel.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we'll definitely leave that in the description below as well, and the show notes, so that people can find that easily. But Chris, I just want to thank you again for being on the show and sharing all this advice with us. I personally learned a lot, and I think our audience did as well. So, aside from the YouTube playlist, what are some of the best ways for anybody who want to learn more about what you're doing, maybe get more information, or just follow you on social media, just to kind of get that repetition of learning in? What are some of the best places to follow you on?
Yeah, you can go to moneyripples.com. That's our website. All of our social media is pretty much at Money Ripples. So it's pretty easy to remember. Cool thing on moneyripples.com, if you're kind of wondering about passive income and how much you could create in your situation, we even have a passive income calculator you can put your numbers into and kind of get the result to see how much you can create. So pretty cool thing to try out.
Awesome. We'll make sure to leave that in the description as well. So make sure to go check out moneyripples.com if you want to learn more about what Chris is doing. Chris, thank you again for being on the show. Before I let you go here, is there any last pieces of advice, any last things you want to leave with us before you hop off here?
Yeah, I'll just say this. I mean, I've been through highs, I've been through lows, I've been all over the place. I've been trapped, I've been stuck, inside of, working a business that makes six figures, multiple six figures, but then you don't have anything to show for it without having to work, right? And I'm just telling you, the freedom you can create in your life and then power you can have and that time freedom you can have back is so amazing if you can create that passive income. So just know, no matter where you are, there's always hope because if I can go over $1 million in debt and come back, you can too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on the show. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next show. Take care.
Thanks.